the staff hearing officer, and I call the meeting of January 26th to order. Today we have 2 items on our agenda, and there's been no request for changes, so I'll take them in the order that they're listed. In regards to announcements and appeals, I don't have any announcements, and I announced the appeal last week of the cannabis dispensary. Okay. So we'll go to the next item, which is comments from members from the public for items not on today's agenda. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on items not on today's agenda? Now, seeing no one, we'll go to the first item, which was 2849 Verta Vista. If the applicant would like to come up to the table. Good morning. Good morning. Anytime you're ready.
Thank you, Ms. Rudin. The project site is around 5,200 square feet, developed with a single-family residence and a detached 2-car garage. Access to the garage is here off Verde Vista. The proposed project involves a minor expansion at the rear of the residence. The discretionary application required for that application is a modification to allow reduction of the open yard below the required 1,250. I'm going to show you the floor plan. The proposed expansion, which totals about 136 square feet, will allow this existing room that's currently only about 60 square feet to be doubled in size just for improved use. The residence has 2 small bedrooms, 1 bathroom. The addition in this area is to add a master bath for this bedroom. The deck out here, which is a part of the open space, meets the requirements for obstructions within that open yard area. When the current owners purchased the property, the zoning report prepared at that time indicated that a storage shed attached to the side of the garage was non-conforming. Non-conforming, as we recognize, means legal in its current location, which was within the rear yard setback. The applicant came in to see staff with a proposal to remove the shed, adding the square footage here, which almost became a wash as far as square footage, and a staff determination was modification would not be required. Unfortunately, when they actually submitted for plan check, it was determined that the shed did not have permits on record, and therefore it could not be recognized as an existing structure. Although they are proposing to remove the shed and again replace that amount of square footage, the open yard area is below the 1,250. It's staff's position that the way the yard is designed and the proposed garden, I guess the garden's already there, and this outdoor living deck really do provide the amenities as intended by the ordinance. And although the area will be slightly below the 1,250, it's actually going to be 1,077, that it's still providing, as intended by the ordinance, the open yard requirement. Staff is asking for support of this project as it's been submitted.
Okay, great, thank you. Do you want to state your name for the record and add any additional comments?
Britton Jewett. Yeah, the owners are hoping to maintain a single-story lifestyle. They wanted to add a bath simply to bring in a 2-bath house and to complement the dual income nature of the household. It just makes for an easier setup. The addition of the bath is limited only to this area because it adjoins the bedroom. There's no opportunity on any other sides of the house. This is the only spot. And once the bath is located here, the inset that's created is not usable. And so by extending the wall here into an unusable, or a portion that doesn't contribute to the open yard area, it creates a space that can be used as a home office. And so also in removing, that's about 72 square feet, and this is about 80 or so square feet. When the shed is removed, the configuration of the outdoor area becomes simplified and is more usable. And in perceiving the space, the bay here really doesn't compromise your understanding of the size as much as the loss of being able to calculate the 2.5 feet across this width contributes to the numbers going below, the open yard area. In other words, this bay is really the size of a shrub, and ultimately has the effect of reducing 75 square feet of the open yard area off of the calculations. So subjectively, I don't believe that this bay really contributes to a perceived loss of 75 square feet out of the usable open yard area. And when you consider that, the calculation for the new open yard area is equal to what is existing with the shed in place. The other thing is that the owner is convinced that the shed is older than 30 years, but the burden of proof of showing that is such that it would be easier to move forward and get a modification to get out a plan check than to go back and try to determine what documents she can find to show that, which would then go back to what the conditions were when we initially submitted, wherein there's almost an equal trade-off of the floor area of the shed to the new addition. So basically what this is doing is it's allowing her to get a second bath to gain access from the interior of the house to the backyard and allow it to be usable rather than coming through a laundry room and storage shed and being physically separated from the backyard. So the livability of the house is better. There's no perceived impact from the street, and the addition is in keeping with the style of the house such that the amenity of the house relative to the neighborhood is increased, and the value of the structure for the neighbors is also increased.
Okay, great, thank you. I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 2849 Verta Vista Drive?
I don't think the microphones are on for him.
They appear to be here. Can you maybe get a little closer?
Is this better?
No. All right. Sorry. They're illuminated.
Have we received any letters on this?
We have not.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing. I went out to the site and went in the backyard and looked at the area. I also read the staff report, and I have concerns regarding this project. The site, I realize, is small. It's less than 6,000 square feet. It has an existing house, which is 1,100, over 1,100 square feet, so it's a nice size home. And it meets its open yard requirement now. It has 1,300 square feet of open yard area. And since I've been the staff hearing officer and the previous staff hearing officer, I don't know that we've ever reviewed or approved a request to make a conforming situation no longer meet the requirements. And so I have concerns regarding the encroachment. And going out to the site and looking at the site, it's evident that every inch of the backyard area behind the fence is used as an open yard area, which makes it seem like it's small right now. And to reduce that further, is just impacting that much more. When I was there, the garage wasn't used. There's cars parked in the driveway, and that's shown in the pictures too. So
Staff was requesting that any approval did require that the garage be cleared to provide the required parking for the property, because we too noticed that it was used for storage purposes at this time.
and now the gates that's there in the driveway, that's all permitted.
And where was the gate?
There's a gate somewhere in this area. So that was.
It must have been open the day I was there. I don't remember a gate. Yes, it is permitted.
Okay. All right.
And I apologize. I remember it was closed.
Yeah, no, that's
it's been a
fine.
while since I've been there.
The other.
Ms. Reardon, just for staff clarification, though, if we have a non-conforming open yard, then wouldn't we even be less likely to reduce it down? And there is a modification opportunity for reduction of a required yard. And I know that we've routinely given open yard mods.
Yeah, but I think in this instance that it meets the requirement, and there is the trade-off with the garden wall, but the encroachment into the area I think is too great. One of the options I was thinking that maybe it's supportable is to square the building off so that it's more of a uniform improvement. It extends existing lines, it fills in an area.
That would be 1,201 square feet if we did that. This encroachment, really does compromise the perceived size of the yard more than this one, though. When you in a subjective analysis of it, not just looking at numbers, this yard area is more usable and perceived to be larger than the one where this moves forward. And because principally the view of the yard is from the inside of the house. When this moves across and constricts the width, the usability and the perception of the yard is going to be significantly improved with the addition, even though the area that's mapped by the yard is principally the same from what's existing. And the burden of proof of showing that this is older than 30 years is really what is our problem right now in terms of allowing for this trade-off to be viewed,
So since we view it as being illegal, it doesn't count as being a trade-off or balancing the two out. The other concern in terms of modification, I know we look site by site, but this lot is similar to the other lots in the neighborhood, similar size with the similar houses with the open yard in the back. So it could end up being a domino effect, that more intensification of these houses in this area. I can't support the requested modification as it's submitted. Like I said, I could be supportive of one that has a squared off area. This here is a bathtub that maybe could be relocated to here and then have it out this way.
We're losing.
Or could you possibly
100
consider using some of this area to expand the bathroom?
Well, then what you've done is you've lost the opportunity to view into the backyard from the main living space. That the object is to do an addition that increases the livability of the house by connecting it to the rear yard. This is 2.5 feet and this is 1, so that 3.5 feet in this zone across here is what's compromising the numbers on paper in terms of the size of the open yard area, but it in my mind does not visually restrict the open yard area similar to what the numbers are. If this were a planter and a shrub, it would take up the same volume, and yet my open yard area would be only 50 square feet less than what's the minimum size.
Okay, well, I can't get to the finding of saying that this improvement is an appropriate improvement. You do have a small lot, and the zoning ordinance recognizes situations with small lots in allowing areas to be broken up in separate areas, but they still need to provide the 1,250 square feet, and I know that's not an option in this site given the front setback. And I forget where I was going for my train of thought. But so it is a small lot. It's an okay size house. It's 1,100 square foot house. I don't see any significant constraints which would make this trip it over being able to find that this is an appropriate request. So I can do two. I can just deny you outright and you can appeal it to the Planning Commission, or I can approve the smaller part and you still would have the option to appeal to the Planning Commission and present your case before them then. You would have the smaller project. During that time you could do more research to find out if this is legal or not and show that it was here 30 years ago, and then the whole modification would be dropped. So you can let me know which option you want.
I have to consult the owner.
Okay, what I can do is I can continue to the end of the hearing. There's an item after this. I don't know how long the next item would take, but I can continue to the end of the hearing. You can discuss it with the owner, and then I'll open the hearing back up again, and we can have another discussion.
Ultimately, if this were 30 inches above the grade, it would be a cantilever and wouldn't count either, right? If I cantilever.
I don't think that would apply.
No.
The cantilever is truly for just a bay window projection. It's an architectural element. It's not floor area to suspend a tub.
Right. So if we were at the tub deck and cantilevered the bay window, it wouldn't count.
The tub almost qualifies as floor area because it allows it to be used.
Why don't I continue you to the end of the hearing, and then we can come back and we'll reopen it and have additional discussion. So
Okay.
it's what you're telling me you want to confer with the owner?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll do that. I'll continue item A to after the next item, and we'll continue discussion on it. Thank you.
Thanks.
The next item is 1233 Mission Ridge Road. The applicant would like to come up. Do you have a marked up? Or you can find her. It doesn't matter to us.
I'll do the site plan under that, the overall area map. Do I unroll that? Can I unroll mine? It's the same. Mine has. Can you put yours under mine, Kelly? 'Cause I've got all my notes on here. I just have my notes. I'd rather use this one. Same plans. More or less. There's my little pen. I only got my meeting notes here.
Is it green? Yes.
See if I can.
Okay. I'm Kelly Broadison, Assistant Planner with Community Development, and the project before you today is located at 1233 Mission Ridge. The proposal consists of constructing a new 3,700 square foot, two-story, single-family residence. I'm going to open this up and show you. And along with that will be 400 square foot, two-car garage, and a 192 square foot workshop. Also, a 920 square foot additional dwelling unit, which is over here. So here's the main house, and then the garage, and the additional dwelling unit is over here. And there will also be a 400 square foot garage associated with that additional dwelling unit, and another 100 square foot storage area. And the garage and storage area for the accessory dwelling unit is connected to the main house and the garage for the main house over here along the front entry. There's also pool, spa, associated hardscape, and retaining walls, which will be located on this 31,000 square foot lot in the Hillside Design District. Currently now on site there is a one-story residence, kind of over in this area, and an accessory building, which is over in this corner of the lot, and then a garage is over in this corner of the lot. Those all will be demolished, totaling about 2,800 square feet. The discretionary application that we're looking at today is for a performance standard permit for the additional dwelling unit on an E1 zoned lot. The site is accessed off of Green Ridge Road, which is over here. It's a private driveway off of Mission Ridge. The surrounding neighborhood is completely developed with 1- and 2-story residences and associated uses and accessory buildings. This project does comply with all of the applicable zoning ordinance requirements pertaining to setbacks, parking, open space, building height, and solar ordinance. I would like to mention that I did make a mistake in my staff report. I mistakenly called out the height of the building at 24 feet, and the architect immediately upon receiving a copy of the report called me to correct that, and the actual height is the highest point is at the master bedroom wing, and it's 29 foot 6 inches. Okay, so as far as the performance standard permit, I just want to clear up one thing really quick. At the last several meetings, there seemed to be some confusion about the types of second units on lots, and there are 3 different kinds. There's an accessory dwelling unit, which are only allowed in the R2 zone, and this is not that. This is not what's being looked at today. There's also a secondary dwelling unit, so that's the first one was accessory, and the second one was secondary. Secondary dwelling units are only allowed in the single-family residential zones, and they are not allowed in the high fire. Again, this is not what's being proposed today. So there's accessory, secondary, and just to make it confusing, we have an additional dwelling unit. This is what's being looked at today. Additional dwelling units are allowed with the approval of a performance standard permit. The applicant is requesting approval of a performance standard permit for this additional dwelling unit under Chapter 2893 of the Municipal Code. This section states that additional units can be permitted if the approving body can make the findings that there will be adequate lot area for the development, that there is sufficient egress and ingress, and that the location of the ADU, additional dwelling unit, complies with all of the applicable ordinances. Well, this subject property is in the E1 zone on an average slope of 8.94%, which requires a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet. The minimum lot size in the E1, as I said, is 15,000 square feet, and therefore this 31,000 square foot lot provides adequate lot area for 2 residences. Access to the lots and the ingress and egress is existing and will not change, and it's currently provided off of Green Ridge Lane. The location of both of the residential units conform to the requirements of the zoning ordinance as described more thoroughly in the staff report. This project complies with all of the applicable zoning ordinance requirements pertaining to setbacks, parking, open space building height, and solar ordinance. In regards to environmental review, as with all discretionary projects submitted for review, this project underwent a staff analysis to determine the level of environmental review. And this project would not block, after visiting the site and reviewing the proposed plans, it was determined that this project would not block greater community views or public views of the ocean or mountains from any important public viewing locations. While the project will change private views for a few of the adjacent residences, important scenic views and vistas of the larger community will not be adversely impacted. The proposed project retains the existing mature oak trees on the property and involves minimal grading and is located in an area already developed fully with residential uses. The project, therefore, will not substantially degrade the visual character or the quality of the site or significantly adversely affect day or nighttime views in the area. The city's urban historian has reviewed the project site and has determined that the existing residence on site would not qualify as a structure of merit or a landmark, and therefore does not need further analysis in a historic structures report. The fire department has also reviewed the access, visited the site, and looked at the plans, and has determined that the project is consistent with the fire department requirements for residential development within the high fire hazard zone. And the environmental analyst has also reviewed the project, again with staff, and determined that the project qualifies for a categorical exemption under Section 15303, new construction of small structures. CEQA guidelines are clear that this exemption applies to single-family residences and second dwelling units, and that in urbanized areas, and I specify urbanized, up to 3 single-family residences may be constructed on a lot and qualify for this exemption. The term urbanized areas refers specifically to those areas mapped by the U.S. Census Bureau as having a certain density and population. The project site and surrounding areas are clearly mapped as urbanized by the U.S. Census Bureau. In addition, this project does not have the potential to cause significant environmental impacts, and it is for these reasons that the environmental analyst has determined the project is categorically exempt from CEQA. This project also went to design review, the Single Family Design Board, on 3 occasions, and in response to many concerns from the neighbors and the comments from the board, the applicant reduced the size and massing of the project. And at the last meeting, the board expressed their appreciation for the quality and style of the architecture and stated that the project is well integrated with the lot. They stated that the applicant had reduced the size of the main residence, and the board was satisfied with its reduction in square footage. And the project was continued on to staff hearing officer and will return to the board for further review. meaning that the size and design and the overall bulk, mass, and scale are still going to be looked at by the board. It's important to note that this project will not return to the Design Review Board, and the size, bulk, and scale and design of the project will not receive any approvals until story poles are installed. Story poles will be installed to the standard level as described in the Single Family Design Board guidelines and per the request of the Design Board. The overall project design will continue to be reviewed by the Design Board, and the Single Family Design Board, upon seeing the story poles, may very well continue to request additional changes to the building and reductions in the size and massing of the building. So that portion of the project is still being reviewed. Let's see. So in conclusion, this project, staff's reviewed the project and finds that it conforms to the city's zoning and building ordinances and policies of the general plan. In addition, the size and massing of the project have been reviewed by staff and conceptually, and I repeat, conceptually reviewed by the Single Family Design Board, and have found to be consistent. They've been found to be consistent with the surrounding neighborhood. Therefore, staff recommends that the staff hearing officer approve the performance standard permit and make the findings that the project complies with all standards of the Santa Barbara Municipal Code, including adequate lot area for 2 residential units, with associated accessory space, adequate ingress and egress for each residence. The additional dwelling unit has adequate ingress and egress, complies with all ordinance standards, including height and setbacks, and is located on a lot of adequate size for an additional dwelling unit in the E1 zone. So that concludes my presentation. We did receive several letters, both in support and in opposition of the project. We have the environmental analyst here, Melissa Hetrick, if you'd like to ask questions of her, and we also have Jim Austin from the fire department, who is also available if you have any questions for him. Okay. And then we have the architect here, Mark Shields, and the owner, Mr. and Mrs. Sanborn.
Okay. I do have a question. You mentioned about fire department staff reviewing the access. Transportation staff has reviewed it also, correct?
Yes, they have visited the site. Yes.
Okay, if you'd like to state your name for the record and provide additional comments.
Sure. My name is Mark Shields. I'm with Design Arc, architect.
I'm Tom Sanborn. We're the owners. My wife, Barbara Sanborn.
Barbara Sanborn. Okay. Thank you.
We would like to make a small presentation concerning the project and kind of a little bit of history about our design and ideas on the project,
Okay.
if that's appropriate. As Kelly has mentioned in her staff report, the lot size is 31,584 square feet. And it's essentially 2 lots. It's mostly flat, under 9%. And we have the, Barbara, if you want to find the survey letters, which should be on top there, to back up those calculations in terms of lot area and slope. So we have some stamped surveying letters, which I think you already have, but we brought them anyway. Site planning-wise, the overall thinking on the property in terms of plan of the house, there's a few big moves that we've made that we feel are important that you should know about. And that is primarily that we are removing 2 structures, one being the existing non-conforming garage to the northwest and relocating it in our new design. So that will be completely removed.
Southwest.
And also the existing cottage will be relocated to the northeast portion of the site. We think this is significant because these 2 buildings significantly impact the neighbor's privacy to the south. So we think we're helping that situation by moving these dwellings completely out of that area. Siting-wise, in terms of the overall property, there are 2 beautiful oaks on the property, which are outlined here, and we've taken that into account, and we're respecting the drip lines of those oaks We have an arborist letter, I think Barb has that as well, which studied the drip lines and says that it's okay to encroach into this area where we've planned our design. We have a couple photos too I'd like to show you of the oak trees, which are spectacular.
I've seen that, the
you seen
Westry one, yeah.
That was the arborist reports. These are the two oaks that were two different view angles of the oaks, but these are the two oaks that we're pretty much preserving, and so they're a big part of our site planning efforts. And so the house is tucked up against the northern, or the actually western portion of the oaks. And we've also shifted the entire house more northerly on the site, and that also increases the neighbor's privacy to the south. So we have a significant setback, much further than the normal required setbacks, in order to enhance the neighbor's privacy to the south. In terms of distance, I believe it's 53 feet to an exterior loggia from the property line and 66 feet to actual living space on the house from the southerly property line. So we feel that's a significant setback in terms of the neighbor's privacy.
And then the second story goes up
In this area here.
in this area, and this area? So two?
This is split level,
Oh,
and
okay.
the I'll get to that in a minute, but the building mass is built up to tuck against the taller portion of the oaks, and then steps down the site and follows the topography to the west.
Okay.
So we're lowering significantly this portion of the house massing in order to preserve view quarters from the neighbors in the back. So that's the general thinking. Let's see. The parking we've located in a kind of romantic motor court up here to the north of the house, and with a portal designed to subtly end the feeling that Green Ridge Lane is a public road. So without putting gates up at the entry, we've designed this portal which architecturally says, hey, begins to become private property. The Single-Family Design Review Board really liked that approach and liked our notion of the romantic 20s motor court concept. Let's see. I'd like to flip to the south elevation, which more explicitly shows our site massing. In this elevation, you can see that the second-story portion of the house is up against the existing oak trees to the east, and the house steps down and follows the topography down to the west in this area. This dotted line indicates where we started with our design with the Single-Family Design Review Board, and indicates the reduction in terms of massing and ridge height that we've worked so hard on, and ultimately the Design Review Board gave us positive comments on all the square footage reductions that we had made in order to bring the house into a comfortable mass size and bulk scale. So they felt good about that. Let's see. The entry portal element, which I think is best shown on the very front page, which is in color, rendered in color on the front page. We designed it in the Santa Barbara 20 style, as Wallace Neff or Mary Craig might have done. And again, I want to reiterate that's a subtle ending to Green Ridge Lane without the necessity for private gates. Through the archway of the portal, you can see the oaks beyond from Green Ridge Lane, which we think is a nice addition to the neighborhood as well. Regarding the entry in Green Ridge Lane in general, we met with Jim Austin and the fire department. They actually drove their fire trucks down there. We have a photo of that meeting. And we have the letter from Jim Austin after he studied the access and fire issues on Green Ridge Lane. and it said in his letter that he feels comfortable with the fire protection aspects of the project, even going so far as to say that the relocation of the cottage to the north actually makes that building more accessible to his fire engines. So that actually, in addition to giving the neighbors more privacy to the south, it actually enhances and improves the fire access. So that was a positive move, I think, as well. If we could flip back to the elevation one more time, south elevation. After our 3 meetings with the Single Family Design Review Board and letters from the neighbors, some positive, some negative, we worked hard, Tom and Barbara and I, and Tom and Barbara are also both architects, on reducing the overall massing of the building. So we lost a second-story bedroom and a studio combination, completely eliminated that square footage. At the request of the neighbors to the south, we also eliminated a second-story deck, completely eliminated it. It was something like 200 square feet. We eliminated a bridge that connected the upper bedroom to the master bedroom, which helped us significantly reduce the ridge height and lose the ridge massing. We lost about 1,500 square feet overall, actually.
Breakfast room as well. Yeah.
We actually lost this little breakfast room as well to reduce the massing on the lower floor to the east. And essentially, it makes this a one-story house on the northern side of the property, or the northwest side of the property, which we feel helps the neighborhood view corridors. The house is now 3,796 square feet, and the cottage is 920. I wanted to show you the FAR diagram, if you will, Barbara. It's one of those illustrations. There you go. When you look at the FAR of our project now overall, this is a FAR diagram. Yes, we did this graphic illustration to show you that this is our property in the center, and these properties that are in color are actually have a greater FAR than we do. So this graphic illustration shows you that we're compatible with the neighborhood. We're not the biggest, we're not the smallest in terms of FAR. Also, I'd like to show the square footage analysis chart. In terms of square footage, if you put FAR and density aside, just looking at the square footage of the structure, we are actually less than these darkened areas, which are also in the neighborhood. So we feel that the overall square footage of the house now complies and feels comfortable in the neighborhood, and the Single Family Design Review Board concurred. Okay. As mentioned before, Kelly mentioned this, we have approximately signatures from 22 neighbors, and I think, Barbara, that neighbor list is there as well. We can show that to you, who support the project. And overall, I think we've respected the oaks on the project. We've eliminated a large existing lawn. Tom, do you have the aerial photo? We could show that. This is the existing configuration of the property. So we respected the oak trees. We're eliminating a large lawn area, which is a more environmental aspect of the project. There are no modifications. There are no solar issues with our siting. We've listened to this Single Family Design Review Board of the neighbors and made design compromises both in square footage and in height, and all resulting in a 7-0 Single Family Design Review Board comments moving forward to this board. Tom, do you have anything to add?
That was very thorough.
Thank you.
If we have any time, I'd like to preserve it to clarify any comments that may come up during the public hearing.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
And in closing, I thought we'd say that we feel the home is thoughtful, respectful, handsome addition to the tradition of Santa Barbara Riviera architecture, and it is our hope that you agree and move us forward to preliminary design review with PSP approval. So thank you for listening, and thanks a lot.
All right, thank you. I'm going to open the public comment. I want to make two announcements, though, just to remind people what's before the staff hearing officer today. It's a performance standard permit, and the basis for review has to do with zoning consistency, if there's adequate lot area, setbacks, that kind of thing. Size, bulk, and scale, neighborhood compatibility, that's the design review purvey. There's, it's not part of, although I know it's important issues to the neighborhood, in terms of what's before me today, I don't have discretion over that part of the project. So if you can focus your comments on the performance standard permit side, that would be great. Given the number of speakers, too, I am going to limit the speakers to 2 minutes, and I'll have Kelly work the timer, and she'll let you know when you have your time's getting close and when it's up, okay? So start it here, and see, and then you have to stop it, and then clear. Okay, someone
Where's the 2 minute mark?
it's right here, that would be 2.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, it's 0 now, but when this goes up, you'll see that will turn to 1 and then 2. Okay, so the first speaker is Laurel Phillips, to be followed by Keith Rivera. And you can just come up here and sit at the table, it's fine.
Thank you. It is a little bit maybe out of order in that I'm a positive comment, and I would like to address some of the legal letters that have been flying around, and so I would step back and speak later after I know what comments are the negative ones.
Do you want to go last?
Yes.
Okay. So then I'll start with Keith. Good morning.
Morning, Keith Rivera. I'm representing the Gainey family that lives directly south of the project. And the Gainey's primary concern has always been potential impacts that the project might have on the privacy of their open space, their yards. And they've been working with the applicants to address those concerns throughout the project. And they've appreciated the design changes and modifications that the applicants have made to address their concerns. However, at this point, there's still feeling that they can't fully evaluate any potential impacts until the story poles are up, and we can physically see the positioning relative to their open spaces. They realize that the Single Family Design Board has required the story poles prior to the next hearing, and they would request that those story poles include some representation of the second floor master bedroom openings, which are the ones that have potentially the most concern for them as far as views into their yard. So that would allow them to fully evaluate at that time what potential privacy issues there could or couldn't be.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Beverly Johnson Trial.
Hello. I live at 1218 High Ridge Lane, which is directly to the north of the project. And we've already talked about story poles, so we are very much in favor of story poles. Adding a second legal dwelling on the property significantly impacts the neighborhood. The streets in this neighborhood are narrow and have no sidewalks. Any additional traffic poses a safety hazard. The Neighborhood Preservation Ordinance and General Plan for Santa Barbara were written to protect the character of the city and its neighborhoods. I urge you to follow them so that our neighborhood doesn't end up looking like Orange County. In comment to the FARs being larger in some of the houses than in the vicinity than the project. These are houses that were put in before the Neighborhood Preservation Ordinance. So that has to be considered. And I think the neighborhood preservation ordinance is something like 2 years old or so. And I'm requesting that you deny the project or at least delay the final city staff hearing officer action until we do see the story poles. Now, I also have a letter from my husband. Do you want somebody else to go and then I'll come back?
Go ahead.
Okay. His name is Alan Trial, and he's concerned about the proposed development of this property and has expressed his opposition at several SFDB meetings. The project is too large and not compatible with the neighborhood. Our neighborhood evacuated for both the T fire and Jesucita fire. Excessively increasing the density of development on any lot in the Upper Riviera increases the danger from the next wildfire to the entire neighborhood and is simply unacceptable. Increasing the density of development, especially adding an additional dwelling unit, impacts the neighborhood on a day-to-day basis by increasing traffic. Allowing the applicants to exceed city development guidelines will encourage other property owners to do the same. This will lead to an increase in density and a decrease in quality of life and safety to all residents of the Riviera. And he also asked that it be denied or the action delayed until essential information is available, namely a proper survey, because this is number crunching, this over here, to determine the true size of the lot and story poles. Yes, we'd like to see a regular traditional survey because there's a controversy with the city of 28,000 square feet as opposed to 31,000.
Okay, great, thank you. I'd like to remind people again, the question of the FARs and the size, bulk, and scale, that's design review. This lot is greater than 15,000 square feet, so it is a guideline. The zoning standards apply if it's under 15,000 square feet. Oh, your husband does have a speaker slip, so. The next person is Beth Ford. Hi, good morning.
Hi, morning. My name is Beth Ford. I was asked by Mark Chitillo to look at access issues on the Green Ridge Road. First, I looked at the new ordinance 5535 passed by the city recently, which says that fire apparatus access roads shall have an unobstructed width of not less than 20 feet. If the fire apparatus roads serve 3 or fewer single-family residential units, the required width may be reduced to not less than 16 feet. So then I went out to the road, which is about a 400-foot long road, and did some measuring and took some pictures. I want to submit this picture that I took from the top, the north side, looking down the road. The residence is at the end of that road. And then I measured it in probably about 6 different locations, and nowhere was it wider than 16 feet. And at the top, for a distance of about 20 feet, it actually went down from 16 to about 14 feet. And I would like to submit another picture here of me holding the tape measure where it was 14 feet. So in conclusion, adding a 7th home, there's already six homes along this lane, and adding a 7th home through the PSP process would actually increase capacity and the risks associated with ingress and egress, especially during an emergency.
Great, thank you. The next speaker is Mark Chitillo.
Before I get started, as a point of order, Ms. Rogers has offered to give me her time. I have, as you know, I've submitted a letter which is somewhat detailed, and I'd request that if I could, I think I can focus it in on a 4-minute time frame.
Okay, so Katie O'Reilly Rogers, you're taking her time?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Mark Chitillo, and I'm here on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Denenholtz, who reside on Mission Ridge Road, and their access is on Green Ridge. I'll move right to the particular issues that before you. We don't believe that the performance standard permit can or should be issued. We note that it is a discretionary permit, and therefore it is subject to CEQA. So we believe a number of the issues of neighborhood compatibility are germane to your determination. However, you need not get to that because, as the previous speaker indicated, there is inadequate access to this site for emergency vehicles, and therefore you may not approve this project. You cannot make the findings because there is not evidence in the record to establish that the Green Ridge Road access meets the current applicable standard for access to residences in the high fire hazard area. This is a practical concern to the neighbors because in the event of an emergency evacuation or other emergency services to any of these homes, this roadway is not narrow. And if you could refer to the picture of the fire truck that the applicant has submitted, the reason for a 20-foot road is to ensure that residents can evacuate while emergency vehicles are accessing the site. And as that photograph shows, the roadway is clearly not wide enough to achieve ingress and egress at the same time. And that's essential in the high fire hazard area in order to ensure that emergency responders can get to the houses, and in particular the additional house. While there is a second house on the lot, it is non-conforming and it is not a residence. And we think that that's an important distinction that is clearly relevant to your findings as you're required to make. The ordinance does not provide that the road should be legally non-conforming. It is that there has to be adequate provisions for ingress and egress. And I had a conversation with Mr. Austin of the fire department yesterday, and I won't speak for him since I understand he's present and he may be able to address any questions that you might have. But it's my understanding that the view of the fire department is that they don't have the authority to require widening of the road, and as a result they have acceded to the acceptability of the existing access. But as noted, it's as little as 14 feet in some places. I'd like to move on to the CEQA issues. A categorical exemption is only appropriate when there is no possibility of a significant impact. My time's on the bottom? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Great. When there are unusual circumstances due to a project's location, cumulative impacts, or historical resources, then it is not appropriate for a project that otherwise may be considered appropriate for a categorical exemption to be exempted. As I indicated in the letter, there is substantial evidence that, in fact, this is not a small structure within the definition of the categorical exemption as defined by the CEQA guidelines, and consequently it doesn't fit within that exemption. But further, because of the location where you have a highly scenic area, where you have limited access in a high fire hazard area, where you have a structure that has some historical significance, and where you have neighborhood incompatibility associated with the excessive FAR, the massive motor court, the view blockage associated with the extracurricular wall on the front end of the property as viewed from Green Ridge. These are all the kinds of factors which indicate there's a potential for a significant impact. And under those circumstances, it's not appropriate to employ a categorical exemption. And we would ask, and the last point I would make is that staff has indicated that the general plan policy only protects important public views and public scenic corridors. There is no word important in the general plan policy, and we think that that's an inappropriate application that narrows the application of this policy. Under pocket protectors, if you have a policy inconsistency, that can also be evidence of a significant impact, potential significant impact, which eliminates the use of a categorical exemption. So we would ask that you deny the project because you cannot make the findings with respect to the ingress and egress. Prior speaker spoke to the survey inadequacy. We would join in that concern and further direct that there needs to be environmental review that's performed before this project could go forward. We think the easiest way to do it is to just deny the PSP and send this back so that we can work out our view issues and the other neighborhood compatibility issues. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The next speaker is Judy Denholtz.
Good morning.
Hi.
I'm here on behalf of my husband and I. We own 1225 Mission Ridge Road. A couple of things. Mr. Chisello has covered adequately many of the items, but I'd like to point out that the cottage, which is now for the first time I think being called a cottage, is actually an illegal structure if it's being used as a residence. My understanding is that when the property was purchased, there was a ZIR, and there were it was noted that the property was in violation of the zoning code, that there was not to be a kitchen, that there had been an improper modification, and that was to be changed. And that was told to the owners prior to the time that they bought it. So now when there's discussion about moving the pre-existing cottage, they're talking about moving an illegal cottage. So it's very relevant to the issue of whether or not there should be two separate residences on this narrow lane. The level of story poles hasn't really been addressed. I'm not certain at all that the Single Family Review Board indicated that it was to be just a single level or the simpler level of story poles. We believe that because of the size of the project, it needs to be a full level of story poles, which there are adequate reasons stated. Actually, I think almost all of the qualifications for whether it should be full or not full are met. The FAR calculation includes a notional concept of there being two separate lots, and there are not two separate lots. If there'd been a lot split, then you'd have two different properties with 15,000 square feet. You don't have that. I'm not sure that the way it's designed, you have two separate 1,250 square foot open spaces. The lot size, the survey needs to be verified as to the proper lot size, and we are very concerned about the egress and ingress issues on the emergency basis. And the reference to the 22 neighbors supporting the property, if that's the original letter or something that was circulated, there are a number of signatures on that, which if you examine them, for example, there was one of the signatures signed on behalf of our property was a tenant, people who were living there at the time. They were not owners, so they don't have any way to say whether they approve or don't approve of the project. So that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. The last speaker slip I have is Laurel Phillips, and I don't know if anybody else has decided now they wish to speak. If so, you can fill out a speaker slip and give it to Ms. Gu. Good morning.
Good morning. I live on High Ridge Lane, which is the uphill street. I want to address the point about allowing two structures on the property. Some have claimed it would adversely affect other homeowners due to congestion of cars and servants, as the attorney letter stated. I think this is nonsense. I hope the committee sees it for the sham argument it is. The Sanborns are in their 50s. They have no children. The only parents alive are Mrs. Sanborn's mother. They would like to use it as a guest house. It is thoroughly within their rights, within city and county guidelines, to have a guest home. And I think that the neighborhood is somehow whipped into a frenzy for absolutely no reason. They want their piece of paradise the way we all have found Santa Barbara to be, and I am absolutely appalled at the hoops that the Sanborns have had to repeatedly go through to get a beautiful, stellar project through the system that, as a homeowner in Hope Ranch for many years before I moved to the Riviera, and I was looking at project after project for several years, it was a very gentlemanly, concerted process to make sure that all rights were addressed. And yet, for this project, which is absolutely beautiful, I think the property values will only rise. You have let a homeowner who lives at the absolute opposite end of the street hijack this project. And I am just one person who wants to speak out and say enough. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address the staff hearing officer on this item? I have received a number of public letters, and I've read them all, and they've all been entered into the record. So I'd like to close the public hearing. And actually, I received 2 additional emails this morning, Kathy, that you'd want to enter it. I would like Mr. Austin to come up, please, and to address the fire access issues. Can you hand me that microphone? I've received your letter, your email that you wrote regarding it, but in specifically regards to the fire access on the road. Let me just clip that on. And if you can address your review of it, turn it to the side. I don't know that we have one at the road. You have
Yes,
that
right
area.
here.
Aerial view, just fast, Julie.
This is right in here.
There's a couple public letters that were submitted. One was from Mr. Chatello, and I think Ms. Brodesson forwarded you a copy of it. And then this morning we reviewed or received further clarification of an instance of an ambulance needing to come down the lane, and they were able to come down the lane, but the fire truck wasn't. It appears the impediment for the fire truck to come down the lane was construction-related vehicles from the corner lot up here. But can you provide any insight on?
I did look up
requirements?
I guess I should state my name for the record, Jim Austin with the fire department. I did look up the incident, and unfortunately the captain made no note of any obstructions during the response. But with that being said, we respond to a number of complaints on a regular basis, especially within the last 2 years with the recent T-fire and Hasacita fires, and with the rebuilding process. It is not unusual for construction projects to start impacting the roadways, and so we go up there, we work with the contractors, the homeowners, and it's just a continual basis of reminding people that you have to provide for emergency access. With that being said, there has to be a reasonable degree of working with everybody up here, understanding that everybody has the right to modify their property, and vehicles and equipment will potentially impact roadways, but everybody has to work together. It's going to be everybody's responsibility: property owners, contractors, construction companies, to work together, and sometimes that gets lost in it. The most recent common complaints we're receiving right now is like Mount Calvary Road, which was significantly impacted by the T-fire, and a number of units are rebuilding at the same time. So we run into these conflicts. So it's not unusual. I'm not the captain of that incident, never forwarded that to the Fire Prevention Bureau. So until Mr. Chatello told me about that yesterday, I was not aware of it. I've had no other complaints on Green Ridge regarding obstruction of fire access or emergency access.
Now, what about the width of the existing private road?
Yes, as you can see, a number of the roads up there are existing non-conforming, and we do not historically make a single homeowner try to correct several homeowners' lack of letter of the law access, so to speak. Majority of the roads up here are less than our required widths. With that being said, when we look at projects, we look at what's existing and what's going to be proposed, and we balance that. In this case, the zoning and what buildings are allowed to be there or not is not a fire department purview. A structure to us is a structure. And what was existing up there and what they're proposing, and from a fire department standpoint, is basically the same. They are relocating the buildings to within fire department requirements, which is not currently the fact. The one purported illegal unit is far outside of our requirements, and the new one will be placed within our requirements. The buildings will be sprinklered, which the existing ones are not. That's a significant safety increase as far as structure fire protection goes. The building's materials will comply with Chapter 7A of the Building Code, and now the residential code for high fire construction requirements. And then we will, during the process, have the ability to review and approve the landscaping to our requirements. So based on that, compared to what is existing, it increases the fire safety from that standpoint.
Great, thank you. Now, Kelly, in terms of the existing unit, the accessory structure is legal. It's just the use with the installation of the kitchen, that's the part that's not, correct?
Yes, that's correct. It seems that a previous owner, it was called out in the DIR, and for example, if the Sanborns were to sell the property today and somebody else bought it, it would still be an illegal kitchen, but the structure itself is legal. And even if there was no accessory building, that has no effect on whether or not a PSP would be allowed on this lot or not. The fact that the kitchen is there or not is a moot point as far as the PSP is concerned.
May I clarify one
Thank you.
on this particular issue?
Go ahead.
Prior to purchasing the property, there was a sink in the laundry room that was determined during the review prior to our purchase that might be considered make it a kitchen facility. The prior owner removed that sink, and so
there's no cooking facilities in
that
it?
is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jim. I think that's my questions for right now.
So stick around.
Yeah, thank you. The other question I have was, Melissa, Ms. Hetrick, if you want to come up, our EA. It's already on, you just need to pin it to you. I had a question in regards to the catechol exemption that Mr. Sotelo brought up in regards to the size of the units. The CEQA allows for small units to be added. And so I was wondering if you can respond to that issue.
I can. The CEQA categorical exemptions were developed by the state, and they are classes of development which the state has determined to not generally have a significant effect on the environment. So it's good to keep in mind that when the state says small, it might not be what we consider to be small. And so the exemption that is proposed for this project is 15303. It's called the new construction of small structures. And under it, the state defines what they mean by small structures. And in urbanized areas, they consider up to 3 single-family residences to be constructed to be a small development in an urbanized area. And I think, as Kelly mentioned earlier, this term is very specific. It's a legal term that is defined in CEQA and is defined by the U.S. Census Bureau, and this area clearly is within the urbanized area. So according to this categorical exemption and being in the urbanized area, you could potentially build up to 3 single-family residences, and that includes second dwelling units specifically in this categorical exemption. Mr. Sotelo brought up that no categorical exemption can be used if there is a reasonable possibility for significant impacts to the environment with regard to CEQA. And in this case, we reviewed both the view issue, the fire issue, biology, traffic, all the suite of normal environmental analysis that we do, and found the project not to potentially exceed a CEQA environmental threshold. And it's important to remember that those are thresholds with regard to CEQA, not necessarily cities, policies, or preferences necessarily. And in this case, specifically with regard to the scenic views, I did want to just quickly address that because it has come up on quite a few other projects. While it is proper to consider a project's impacts on private views under CEQA, the question under CEQA is whether a project will adversely affect the environment of persons in general, not whether a project will affect a particular person. The obstruction of a few private views in a project's immediate vicinity is not regarded as a significant environmental impact on scenic views. And in this case, I believe that is the situation that we have. I don't think that views of the community or greater public views are impacted.
Okay, great. That was actually my related question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Kelly, in regards to the lot size, I had noticed that too, that in our, am I on? Sorry, it's in the set.
I noticed too regarding the lot size in our database, it references a number that's smaller than 30,000 square feet, which is the requirement for this site to be able to have 2 dwelling units, and also with the slope, if it's 10%, then they're required to have 1.5 times. And so can you just address the survey and how it was reviewed in terms of altering those numbers?
Ms. Reardon, the information that we have on the city's database is taken from an aerial photo, and it's very general. We just use it as a general kind of a guess when a person's initially coming in to look at their project. And usually it's just they go with whatever we have. But in some cases, in many cases, they'll have a surveyor that'll actually plot out the lengths of the different lots, property lines, and measure out the site. So in this case, the first surveyor was Mr. McComber, and he plotted out the site and measured the site and certified it with his stamp. And then I think there are 2 additional surveyors have also reviewed this. I mean, it's important to make sure that this lot is 30,000 square feet at least, or else this project isn't even going to go forward. So that was the first thing that they had to do. And so we've reviewed it and verified that the lot lines, the lengths of the different dimensions are correct in his review.
And the contour lines too, they were?
Yes.
Okay.
As far as the slope.
So we've had 3 surveys done?
Yeah, we've had 3 surveyors look at the lot size and verify that it's greater than 30,000 square feet. And then we haven't had that. Actually, Mr. Sanborn did it of his own accord because it's the most important part for him.
Okay.
And that's why I think the first thing that Mr. Shields gave to you.
You have those letters. You should have
I have them
there.
already, and then he just handed them to you, and
Okay.
they're probably buried in here somewhere.
Okay, and then in regards to the tree, you said they're going to be incorporated into the project, and and you referenced the arborist report, and I have it too, and it's your intent to carry out the recommendations of this report in terms of tree protection measures
Absolutely.
and grading and.
They're important to us, those
Okay.
trees, yeah.
Okay. Well, I went out to the site. Thank you very much for meeting me there and showing me around the site and pointing out the areas of development. And I've read the staff report, and I've read all the public comment letters that have been submitted. And like I said at the intro of the public comment section, that the views issues is not an issue that's before me. I agree with staff's and the environmental analyst's conclusion regarding this project does not obstruct a scenic public view corridor. I don't even know if you're standing downtown or on the waterfront, you'd be able to pick out this site from down there, and then from above, there's so much existing vegetation and hedges, it's not visible from a public area. Green Ridge Lane itself is a private road, so in terms of visual impacts, I don't see that being an impact in terms of CEQA. It is a design review issue. It is a good neighborhood policy issue. It is something that the design review boards will be grappling with. But in terms of the performance standard permit, that doesn't come into my review. In regards to the fire access, and the ingress and egress, given the input I've had from the fire department and the transportation staff has reviewed the plans, it is adequate for one additional small unit to be provided on this road. And so I think that is, the other finding that can be made. In regards to the project's consistency with the zoning ordinance, there's been several surveys who have looked at this site and determined that there is more than 30,000 square feet for the site. It meets all its setbacks. It meets the building height. It is, close to 30 feet, but that is your height limit. And again, whether it's too high or not, that's a design review issue. In regards to open yard area, yes, there's plenty of adequate open yard area on site. So there is 2 areas that meet at least 1,250 square feet. So in terms of zoning ordinance consistency, those findings can be made. So, given all those factors, I could make the findings outlined in the staff report. However, I would like to add some conditions to the project. One, you have said it's your intent to save the trees, and I believe that and everything, but I would like to make it a condition that those existing 2 oak trees, one's 20 inches and the other's 24, they're nice-sized trees, be preserved and protected on the site and maintained, and that the recommendations of the tree report, the tree protection during construction measures they proposed, including in the body of the report, there was some discussion about permeable pavement and that kind of stuff, that be incorporated into the project and shown on any plans submitted for a building permit. And then also I would like to put on the project 2 conditions related to construction, parking, and storage, which that seems to be an issue with the previous one. And these are just standard conditions, and I'll give you a copy, that we do on larger development projects. It requires that construction, vehicle, equipment, and material storage be staged on site, and I think there's adequate room on site. You can do that. And that no parking or storage shall be permitted within the public right-of-way unless specifically permitted by the transportation manager with a permit. And then construction, parking, during construction, free parking spaces for construction workers shall be provided on site, or it could be off-site if it's subject to review and approval of the transportation manager. And so they'll have to look at such things as not blocking access to the other residences.
Fine.
So with those 3 added conditions, I approve your project. And my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and that appeal is filed here at 630 Garden Street versus City Hall. So you come to the planning counter. Planning Commission also has oversight of all my actions, and if they feel this warrants additional discussion before them, they have the ability to call it up during that same 10-day calendar period. If that was to occur, Ms. Broadison would contact you. Okay?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Sure. I'm going to take a 5-minute break to allow the applicant and staff to come back for the first item. Okay, thanks.
Verde Vista? Oh, wonderful. You missed the first part and you were here. Would you like to sit up at the table to participate in the conversation? Come on up. Is the public hearing closed?
ROS,
All right.
R-O-S.
yes. Somebody left the water.
Okay, and were you able to view it on the
Yes,
overhead?
I was.
Okay, so
what the project's about?
Yes, I do.
I'm reconvening the meeting. We are discussing 2849 Verde Vista. And before we broke, I was stating my concerns regarding the amount of encroachment. And so I gave the applicant some time to be able to discuss options with the owner. And since that time, I do have a speaker slip from Joaquin
Roses.
Roses.
I just wanted to be on the list for future mailing if there's anything going on.
Okay. Did you want to add any comments?
Well, my only comment was I briefly saw the map or the plans yesterday on the eastern elevation.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically
This one?
eastern or eastern elevation, facing to 924 Verde Vista. I own that property, and my concern was the added space, windows facing, overlooking into the property, into the backyard.
Okay.
And we will point out that that wall does conform to the required setback, so it's really not under the staff hearing officer's purview. But as a concerned neighbor, that's good information for the architect.
I mean,
Okay.
because
This
I
is
had
appropriate.
some development to the east of 2924 Verde Vista that they put a two-story high. And talking to the neighbors at that time, I said, please don't have any windows overlooking into. It's as a privacy issue.
Sure,
So that's my only concern.
we respect that.
Okay, so I'll reclose the public hearing.
So based on our conversation, I want to go with this plan I just made. But
Did it
basically,
get inside the pages? Next one?
if we extend this line across, maintaining 5 feet minimum clear inside, then we can reconfigure a bath within that space that the owner is okay with.
Okay, so you are okay with the option to just square it off, to make
That's
it
correct.
go down enough?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I feel that that part is supportable, and I can approve the project as altered in the hearing and make the findings outlined in the staff report. Staff is recommending a condition that the plans submitted in conjunction with the application show removal of shed and that the garage is accessible for
I
parking.
understand.
Will there be 1,250 if you reduce that, or will it still
No.
need a mod?
It will still need a mod.
Okay.
And we'll calculate that area. I think it'll be 100 square feet short.
My calcs were looking more like 50.
50, so 12.
That's reasonable.
Yeah, it was just over like 1201, right, would be the square footage. So, yeah, it'd just be a minor reduction in the amount of the open yard area. So, okay, so with that, I approve your project, subject to those conditions. And like I said at the previous application, I think you came in, this action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And they also have oversight authority of all my actions. And if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day period. And if that was to occur, Ms. Malazzo would contact you.
Okay.
Okay? Sure. I adjourn the meeting.
Thank you very much. Okay, now is your opportunity.